My name is Kevin McNeil. I was a law enforcement officer for 8 years and a special victim detective for 12 years. During my 8 years as a law enforcement officer, I saw a lot. Worked 6 serial rape cases. I worked 5 child murder cases. Out of all these things I went through as a law enforcement officer, it was this one case that made me realize the why behind the work. And this case involved a little boy. This little boy told me about the times that he went to school and he was bullied all the time. He came from a single parent home. His mother, she did her best to raise her 5 children, but she was at work all the time. This little boy never met his father. He didn't have the best of clothes, so when he went to school, kids made fun of him. He had a speech impediment. They made fun of that. He went to school crying, and he came home crying. But every single day, he continued to go to school because he didn't want to let his mom down. He was 12 years old. Like any little boy his age, he had hopes, he had dreams, he had aspirations. In fact, this little boy wanted to be a bodybuilder. And he wanted to be a bodybuilder not because he wanted big muscles. He wanted to be a bodybuilder because he thought that if he had bigger muscles, kids would be too intimidated to bully him. And he started lifting weights. One day he did it after school and he lost track of time. It began to get dark, so the little boy panicked. He knew what he told his mom, that he would get home before it got dark. So the little boy grabbed his bag and began to run home, but it was already too late. It was dark. Now he didn't want to disappoint his mom, so the boy decided to take a shortcut behind a high school. And that's when it happened. A man appeared out of nowhere. He startled the little boy. The boy looked at the man. The man looked at the boy. You would have thought that this man knew this little boy. He said, "Son, I've stolen some weights out of the high school gym, and I've hid them in the stadium underneath the bleachers. If you help me, I give you some of them." His passion overrode his fear, and he thought about how he could have his own weight set, and he followed that strange man down those dark steps underneath those bleachers. When they got underneath those bleachers, the man lit a match, and the boy got down on his hands and knees expecting to see weights, and no weights. Instinctively, he knows something is wrong, but it's too late. The man grabs the little boy, and the man begins to beat the boy with his fists. And the boy begins to shake in fear and says, "Sir, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me." The man does the unthinkable to this little boy. He rapes this little boy. At 12 years old, he was raped. Once he gets done dehumanizing this little boy, he took his grown man hands and put it around the little boy's neck and began to squeeze as hard as he could. The little boy began to beg for his life, please don't kill me. And then he remembered what his mom told him. Come home. When he remembered those 2 words, that little boy began to fight. And he fought that grown man. And he fought that grown man as hard as he could. And he ran from underneath those bleachers. He ran across the football field, ran into an open highway. Cars began to swerve left and right, thinking that he was a crazy person, attempted to commit suicide. And he got to the other side and finally. And he looks behind him and he sees that man disappear in the darkness. He got on the street where he lived. He noticed that his jeans was mixed with blood and mud. He can still feel the man's hand around his neck, and he can still smell the stench of the man's odor around his body. He begins to limp home, and the closer that he gets to home, his mom recognizes her son. "Oh my God, my son, what happened to you?" He couldn't dare tell his mom that the first time a man ever went to embrace him, it was to rape him. He didn't have the words to express the shame, the anger, the fear that he now had of the world around him. He lied to his mom. She said, "Son, what happened?" He said, "Mom, I was robbed. I'll call the police for you." He said, Mom, please don't, please." And so his mom never called the police. And normally I don't tell people the names of the children that I work with because of the confidentiality and the sensitivity of the cases. But I will tell you, I know this little boy. Because I am that little boy. I never reported my attacker, and even though he got away, his assailant followed me home. That assailant was trauma. Ironically, I returned to that same field, and I played football. I sat on those very same bleachers. I walked past that incident location numerous times. I lived a life of shame, guilt, anger. I had to put away so much pain, but it was affecting me on so many levels. I started drinking heavily. My health was declining, became pre-diabetic, suffered from PTSD. Now you gotta remember, all this is happening while I'm a police officer. I'm wearing a loaded gun and a badge. And on top of all of that, I got involved in an officer-involved shooting that almost had me killed. 8 years protecting the public, but I didn't feel safe. That's when I became a special victim detective. You see, when I became a detective, they told me I had to go to a forensic interview. I didn't even know what it was. And man, I watched this little boy. And I watched them go into the room and they sat beside the victim rather than in front of them. I saw the compassion flowing in that room. They showed the victim they cared about them as a person. I'm struggling in that seat. I didn't want them to see me cry, but as I watched this little boy get resurrected, the little boy inside of me became resurrected. Once he was done with his forensic interview, he came out skipping and smiling, a totally different person. He was finally able to be heard. The Child Advocacy Center changed the way I interviewed all of my victims. Making an arrest was just part of the process. The healing part came from organizations like the Center for Child Protection. You have different components coming together, sharing their expertise and helping people like me, the detective, bringing forth a case that I can get a prosecution. That's my part. Their part is to do the hard work, the work that they do, law enforcement cannot do. Everything that the child protection team does in their interaction with the victim and their families is to make sure that we do nothing to re-traumatize that child. It is essential for you as a community to understand what trauma looks like, to understand when to report, how to report, and understand how important it is that once someone discloses to you, how to respond. You know, if I had something like the Center for Child Protection, they would have seen the behavior changes. They would have seen me going from a shy kid to one who stayed in trouble. If they had this education to know how trauma affects the behavior of victims who've been affected by this, maybe then I could have gotten help sooner. If I had an informed community, my life would have turned out a whole lot different. You see, that's where you come in at. You can help boys all around Austin so they don't have to go through the traumatic things that I went through in life. I'm a living witness that your work matters. It's because of people like you that I can stand here today, full of hope, full of passion, and full of purpose. Tonight, you have the ability, you hold that power to resurrect the life of a little boy like me.